Hello class and welcome to our presentation, Introduction to Hinduism. So what is Hinduism? Well, the term Hinduism is a general title used to describe the religious traditions of the subcontinent of India dating back to roughly 2000 BCE. And because Hinduism is such an old and varied collection of beliefs and practices, it is a richly diverse and deeply complicated tradition. So heads up, a brief survey of Hinduism can result in confusion. Why? Because in reading a variety of Hindu texts written over the course of thousands of years, it is unclear as to what exactly Hindus believe and how exactly Hindus practice Hinduism. Indeed, one issue of special consideration that I invite us to think about is the question of, is Hinduism a polytheistic or monotheistic religion? In some sacred texts, Hinduism seems to support the existence of many gods and goddesses, but other texts discuss the existence of one god, while others propose an interesting fusion of both doctrines. So again, is Hinduism a polytheistic or monotheistic religion, or is it something else? Something for us to think about. So with this general overview in mind, what is the origins of Hinduism? That is, when did the Hindu tradition begin, how, where, and by whom? Well, the story of Hinduism begins in the Indus River Valley civilization in the 3rd millennium BCE. And in fairly recent archaeological excavations of ancient cities like Mohenjo-daro, it reveals that the Indus River Valley civilization was a highly complicated and rather advanced ancient society. And the native population of the Indus Valley, we believe, were the Dravidians, or the dark color or Varna peoples. And the most recent theory is that around 2000 BCE, a group of light-skinned warriors from Persia and Eastern Europe called Aryans invaded the Indus River Valley civilization. And according to early religious studies scholars of the 19th and early 20th century, the Aryans brought Hinduism to the Indus River Valley, resulting in the conversion of the Dravidians. So in other words, the early what we call Vedic gods and goddesses and practices derive from Aryan civilization, and that these traditions were brought to the Indus River Valley area. However, more currently, recent archaeological evidence suggests that Hindu traditions are most likely a mix between Aryan and Dravidian religious belief systems. And some of the evidence to support this theory are statues found in Mohenjo-daro resembling classical Hindu gods and goddesses, as well as images and figurines in lotus position or in the position of meditation. So this evidence suggests that Hindu traditions that are still alive today actually originated potentially in the Indus River Valley civilization well before the arrival of the Aryans. So when the Aryans came to the area, that their traditions basically mixed. Now, because Hinduism is such a complex and varied religious tradition, we will be concentrating upon two periods of Hindu history just to kind of simplify things. What we call classical Hinduism, which lasted from 1200 BCE to 200 CEE, and post-classical Hinduism from 200 CE to the present. And within these two periods of history, we will discuss 5 major Hindu texts: the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Bhagavad Gita from the classical Hindu period, and the Laws of Manu and the Puranas from the post-classical Hindu period. Now, for those of you who are visual learners, here is a nice visual aid. So as I mentioned a moment ago, Hindu history can be divided into 2 periods: classical Hinduism and post-classical Hinduism. And under classical Hinduism, we have 2 sub-periods, what we call the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. And in the early Vedic period, we have the composition of the foundational texts of the Hindu tradition, referred to as the Vedas. And then in the later Vedic period, from roughly 800 BC to 200 CE, we have the composition of the Upanishads, or the commentaries on the Vedas, followed by the composition of the Hindu classic, the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita is going to represent kind of like a transition text from classical to post-classical Hinduism. And it's in the post-classical period that we have the composition of the Laws of Manu and a set of texts collectively known as the Puranas. Now, as a final point, the Vedas and the Upanishads are referred to as Shruti texts, whereas the Gita, the Laws of Manu, and the Puranas are Smrti texts. Now, why are some of these texts called Shruti and others Smrti? Well, we will learn about that in our next presentation.